Yeah, the call of wild's always bringing me home. Call of wild's always bringing me home. Call of wild's always bringing me home.
All right, well, hello, wild ones. Welcome to another episode of the Find Your Wild podcast. I am so excited to be here today with Luke Rain and Sarah Connor. If everyone listening, you would probably hear them or recognize them from the beginning intro song. Call of the Wilds, which is definitely one of my favorite songs ever. So thank you guys so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
So happy
Thanks for
to.
having us.
Yeah, when I first heard that song, because I was going back and forth, I was like, I wonder what I'm going to use to put as the, intro. And, I was like just browsing around, and then it actually came up on an Instagram ad. And I was like, oh my God, this was from the universe. Like I heard it and I immediately knew that it had to be aligned with the podcast. It's so perfect.
Yeah, I was so
Yeah.
honored when you reached out to ask about using it as the podcast theme song. It's like, yes, it's connecting with people, and it had like just come out that week too. I think when you reached out, it was
Oh,
brand
awesome.
new. Oh,
Yeah.
that felt great. I really appreciate that. That reflection of how it's working for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every time I listen to it, I kind of just am like, oh my God, it's like, it really is one of those songs that it's just so nice to listen to. It just has like a lot of depth and it's very dynamic, like the lyrics, the sound, everything about it I really love. So I'm so glad that we were all able to connect in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would absolutely love to hear about your guys' like process, how you came up with it, or did you come up with the song, like the music aspect first and then the lyrics? How did that work?
Oh. Well, so I was on my way back from Texas Eclipse Festival, where I had just bought this instrument called a chroma drum, which is the main melody you hear behind the whole song.
Yes.
And I was just absolutely obsessed with that little instrument, and I still am. And on my way, back towards the West Coast, I had the wonderful opportunity to stop and hang with Sarah in Sedona, and we were hanging out in her sweet bus that she had at the time. And yeah, how did the exact, what do you recall?
I mean, honestly, I think we just knew that we wanted to make music together, and we were kind of toying around with ideas of like, how do we want to start this? Because that's kind of always our other song, Mama Gaia, came from a freestyle that I did, initially. And so we weren't in that situation. We were just kind of like, oh, how do we want to do this? And Luke's like, oh, well, I have this really cool instrument that I just got. I'm super excited about. Like, maybe we should play with that, So he starts doing a little thing on it. And I think that's where that like initial, that kind of like, da 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 da.
Yeah.
Where that comes from. And it just went from there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how it went. I think we started with that little melody, and I recorded, a few little loops of that, and then jumped into, like, I think I put, quick drum beat and bass line on it and just looped it out. And Sarah is such an amazing freestyle artist. Like, she has the ability to just like tap into a channel and just start singing. I think it's a talent and a gift mixed with a whole lifetime of like training and practicing, how most things usually are when somebody's great at something.
I couldn't believe when I heard that it was like that you do freestyle like with your songs. And was this, so you're saying the whole lyrics for this song was freestyle also?
Yeah, so essentially what I love about working with Luke is that, he is so good at putting together these beats and these kind of like backdrops that are really like just feel like juicy and inspiring for me to then drop into my own flow and kind of lay down lyrics for. So basically that's what he did. And then what he'll do is he'll set up the microphone for me and just hit record, and then I'll just start freestyling. And with this particular song, there were multiple things that I brought through, and then Luke ended up coming back, and together we kind of were like, oh, I think this goes here, and that goes over there, and that goes over here, and so the kind of editing process after I freestyle is like, okay, where does this lyric fit? Where does that fit? What's the hook? What's the chorus? But yes, all of the lyrics and the chorus and everything are all freestyled.
Wow. That
Yeah.
I'm honestly like I'm so impressed because that like the I mean it's really half and half because I really love the background and the music obviously too. It's very calming and but the lyrics are also like absolutely amazing. Like every time I listen to it too I'm like, yeah, the lyrics are just so good. Like a wild tigress and like I love each of the connections and like the starting out with like the river and like just I feel like now that you said that you channeled it, I feel like it makes so much sense. It like really is like so strong too.
Thank you. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
Yeah. Is that how you do most of your songs that you freestyle?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. The only song that I have up on Spotify, I think that isn't freestyled, is a song called Rise Up, which is the first song that I made with Luke. And he's just kind of like agreed to be my background producer in that one. And that was, something I made up in my living room when I was like 25. And yeah, and then just eventually was like, oh, this should be a song. And so we brought it to Luke's studio and made it in about half an hour. I think
Yeah.
it was really
Yeah,
fast.
that one I still tell people like they ask like, "Oh, like how long does it take to make a song with you?" I'm like, "That really depends on a bunch of factors, but I can tell you about the fastest one ever." That was Rise Up with
Wow.
Sarah Connor because she was just so, she like that one she was like so practiced, knew every line, every melody, every harmony and just wanted like a very simple bare bones like beat. The beat is just like a bass line and a snap that loop in the background of the song the whole time. And it's just so beautiful, such a vibey song. And even has a really cool drum and bass remix
Yeah.
by our friend Spirit of the Wood, which I got to actually play live in at a show in Santa Cruz. I was doing Ecstatic Dance Santa Cruz last week, and at closing circle, one of the people in the circle was like, "Oh my god, like this is such a great set!" And I was so pumped to get to hear Sarah Connor. Do you know her? I'm like, yeah. And it turns out it was one of Sarah's students in her. What is your course called?
Yeah, I call it a vocal immersion. So I
Vocal
do these
immersion.
these 3 month long vocal empowerment immersions for people, and yeah, that was one of my students who was there at that dance. It was so awesome to see you guys together. It was
Oh,
rad.
I love that connection. How awesome is that? Like, yes, I know her. That's
Yeah,
so
small
cool.
world.
Yeah, right? And what that's so cool. Vocal empowerment. Like what is that what's that process like?
Absolutely. So the goal of the immersion is to help people step fully into their authentic voice. And so within that, it's a process of teaching people, basically to get comfortable in their bodies with the way that their voice sounds. A lot of people are not very comfortable with their vocal expression.
Mm.
They might feel like relatively okay talking, but not so okay singing, and or vice versa. Sometimes that happens too. Um, so I like to blend, vocal techniques and kind of that kind of level of practice that I do have training in, with these more kind of somatic embodiment practices that can help people to really fully embody their voice and kind of work with the magic of the voice, because magic is a really big part of what I do. And so we get to kind of like tap into that. And I see a lot of people who are like, oh, I really want to freestyle like you, or I feel like I have that kind of I feel like I have that kind of channel and I just want to develop it more.
Mm.
So I help people to do that as well.
I love that. That's so cool. I feel like embodiment is I love that there's such a focus on that now. I mean, I have to be honest, I have to be a little bit better at that myself, but I think that there is something really powerful about being in the body and trying to work through things to I don't know, just to move, to be with be with the now, be with, yourself in your body. I think it really helps with people's mental health too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so much in alignment with, like like find your wild. I love the name of
Thank
your
you.
podcast, and just
Oh, thank you so
really,
much.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. It really makes me think of that. Like so often I think our society is built in such a way that we kind of get disconnected from being embodied. There's so much to disassociate from in this world, but to actually take the courageous step and really feel fully, and to be able to, through feeling, like express yourself fully, and just be more free in who you are in this world, is a really big and fun and wild thing to do. So yeah, I
Absolutely.
love that we get to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's such a nice compliment. And that's definitely what I'm hoping to do with the podcast, is to help connect people back to their own inner wild. And I think when people are, like you said, like they're more embodied, they're more connected. I think especially to our more primal like selves, like our ancient selves, they were more connected with nature. And I think that like science also proves that, like, there's a lot of studies, like birdsong helps us more, moving helps us more, like using our voice. And I feel like the more people do that and express themselves, the more they're going to be one with themselves. And I think it's going to be easier to get along with people, for them to branch out and connect with other people, because they're whole themselves. And like that's like the path through.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, Luke, I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit. Luke is a person that I really feel like has such an incredible sense of like sovereignty within himself, and just like a really clear sense of like who he is and what he wants and what he doesn't want. And he's just like I've watched you, Luke, just be very able to like communicate yourself to other people and like navigate through life in a really beautiful way, just through like uh through this way that you express yourself. I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, if you don't mind,
Not
Brianna.
at all. Not at
Please.
all. Wow. I mean, first, I really appreciate that reflection. Thank you. And means a lot coming from you, Sarah. And yeah, it's been a journey to get here. And I think that's, it's easy for us to like look at where somebody else is at and be like, oh, how could I get there? How could like, I don't think I could do that. But remember like that each person that's doing something great, or seems so good at something, started out not being that good at something. Like I was like a really shy kid. I spent so much of my life in like people pleasing modes, and like trying to fit in with something that wasn't truly aligned for me. And I had a lot of beautiful connection growing up, and also a lot of times where I was like going against myself to try and be part of the crowd. And the that's one of the beautiful things about, at least for me, it's been like getting older, has just been finding more of my own authenticity, and more of my courage to like step into who I really am. And it's funny because like the week I met Sarah was one of the biggest weeks for that in my whole life. It was coming out of the pandemic, 2021 summertime, and I got invited to do this like DJ show, and people were like, are you free on Saturday? I know it's last minute. I'm like, I haven't done anything in a year and a half. Please get me out of the house. And I went to this party, and overall the party wasn't like super aligned for me. Just everybody was, getting, being very unconscious with the way they were using substances and things, and there was a lot of drama at it. But I met a couple of folks that were much more my speed, and at the end of that, they were like, "Hey, like, you should come over, hang out with our friends. Like, I think you'd like that better." And I got invited to this potluck. That was next door to Sarah's house, at Lionijah's house, our dear friend, and stepped into that room and just felt this like, oh, here I am. Like, these are my people. Like this amount of authenticity, and like that reflection of all these people who are being so authentic and being so embodied and being so present and being so intentional with community, and with how we stepped into like even eating the meal. Like Sarah gave this like amazing like drop in. I don't remember what was said, because that was almost 4 years ago, but but I just remember it being really powerful to me. And over these last 3.5, 4 years, I have been in an environment that's been so supportive of me being more and more myself. And I've been on that journey for years before that, but in situations that were less aligned. The relationships I was in, the work situation I was in, the food I was eating, the different things, and like little by little finding the reflections and the support and the community to make better and better decisions for myself. And then like getting to pass that on. I'm hanging out at a friend's house today, and his other friend is also staying here, and he was like, "Hey man, like, you want some breakfast? I got like fruity pebbles and coffee." And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm good, man. Thanks." He's like, "Oh yeah, no." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't really eat like cereal like that. I just don't feel good after." And he's like, "Oh man, like maybe that's the problem. Like I keep getting tired after I eat breakfast. Maybe it's because I'm just eating a bowl of sugar." I'm like, "Yeah, maybe, man." So just like dropping those little hints to other people of like, I'm not gonna judge you for what you eat, and also I'm gonna be honest. And I
Right.
feel like a lot of people do this thing that I used to do, where it was like, I wouldn't say want a beer really, but somebody would be like, "Oh, hey, do you want a beer?" And I'd be like, "Ah, well, I don't want to offend them by saying I don't want a beer, so I guess I'll have this beer that I don't really want." But then at a certain point, I gave up alcohol completely because my hangovers got wild, and I then people would be like, "Hey, do you want a beer?" I'm like, "Oh, no, thanks. I stopped drinking, but appreciate you. Feel free." And a lot of them would just be like, "Cool, I'll have the beer I want and not pressure you like
Right.
a decent human being." And I was like, "Oh, wow, right?" And then a lot of them would be like, "Oh, I actually don't want a beer either. Thanks for saying something. I was just doing it out of habit."
Mhm.
Getting to be, getting to pay it forward, be that good influence. And grateful to all the good influences I've had.
Yeah.
That tapping into the authenticity.
I love that. Thanks so much for sharing that, because I feel like that it's so hard to for right, like it's so hard to find ourselves, how we can find our own like path in life, and like finding ourselves is actually a much harder thing, I think, sometimes than people realize. But I love that these kind of like signs from the universe like come, and like the more you're yourself, like the more things kind of like align and like click together. I feel like I'm kind of finding that space myself right now, and it's like, oh wow, this whole world is like opening up, and like the more that you're yourself, and like kind of like you were saying, Sarah, like in your own like sovereignty, and like, oh yeah, I don't need to do that. The more you like have your own voice, then it's, and you do it in like a respectful way, and you're just like you said, you're connecting with people, and you have that space to be able to be like, hey, you know what, actually I don't want that. But and then like I feel like other people just respect that, because they're like, oh yeah, no, that's cool, like I get that, no worries.
And anybody who doesn't and like attempts to peer pressure, well, cool, they're telling me a lot about themselves and that they're not currently ready to hang out with me.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Like I have chosen that I only hang out with people that respect my choices and decisions and lifestyle, and I'll respect yours. But if you don't give me that respect back, cool. Thank you very much. Now we can go.
Yeah, absolutely. um I feel like that, I think it's cool that we've come to a point that we don't need to like peer pressure each other. I feel like that was such a big thing. I don't know how old you guys are, but at least for me when I was younger, the peer pressuring thing, and it's funny to hear you say like, if somebody, I used to definitely peer pressure people a lot when I was
Oh yeah, I've
younger.
done it.
But now I'm like, I'm a mom, and I definitely don't want to be hungover, so I don't drink like really at all, unless like we're out to dinner or something like that. But to just like, also be in the present moment, and like being able to have that connection is with other people is just, I think, really powerful. I also wanted to ask you guys about your start and your beginning with music, because I know, Sarah, you said that you were trained, like you have. So I would love to hear you talk about that a little more.
Yeah, sure. Um, yeah, I can definitely go into that. So I Um, yeah, the story that my parents will tell is that I used to cry or sing instead of cry when I would wake up in the morning. And so that was kind of like the first moment where people were like, huh, maybe there's something there. Um, and then my brother, he's 7 years older than me, and he was in choir before I was. And so I remember going to a show of his, and I had this point after he was finished where I went up to my mom and I was like, when is it my turn? Because in my mind, I had all of these memories of me practicing for like an entire quarter of a year to then perform at that show. I don't know where those memories came from. But so it like didn't make sense why I wasn't singing on that stage that day. And my mom was like, "Oh, huh, we should put you in choir." And then she put me in choir, and then I experienced all of those memories that I had, but after the experience. I don't know how that works, but anyway, that was kind of the beginning. And then I was in choir for like ever, and then once I got older, I was also classically trained in piano, which really helped my ability to understand music and, singing and music theory and all of those things. Um, and then as I got older, I started taking private lessons. And when I got into high school, I was really curious about opera. So I started studying opera and studied that through college, which was really amazing and exciting. And I just have like so much respect for singers that do that because it's such a feat of physiology
Yeah.
to be able to project like that, without a microphone over an orchestra in a huge auditorium. But in all of that, I just never really found something that connected to my soul. And I've always been a spiritual person ever since I was little. I wasn't really indoctrinated with any dogma around that. My parents were just kind of like, whatever you want to do about, spirit, you figure it out. And so I got to kind of explore and kind of naturally led towards more kind of like earth-based spiritual practices, and ended up, stepping into a lineage of Hermetic magic later in my life, which has been really powerful and definitely interwoven with all of the musical channeling things that I do. But for music, I just kind of like let it go for a while. I had been writing music since I was 11, and so I was very familiar with composing music, but I couldn't really find a place for myself within what I thought was like correct for a musician. I'm like, I need to pick a genre. I need to like then compose in that genre, and then I'll be, somehow get a record label, and then somehow, and it also seemed really impossible for me because my creativity is such that I just kind of like would create whatever I created, and it never felt like I could like be like, oh, that's pop or that's folk or that's, you know. Um, and so I just kind of like kept it in the closet for a while. And then maybe 4 or 5 years ago, or more, I can't remember. I was in Port Townsend. My family lives over there, and I ended up at a jam in a friend's studio. And it was the first time I ever freestyled, and I did it, and I was like, huh, like that was kind of cool. I bet I could do that. And it actually got recorded, and I look back on that recording sometimes, and I'm like, wow, I was so bad. That was terrible. But in my mind at the time, I was just like, wow, that was pretty good. I think I could do this, you know? And and so I just kind of like made an agreement with myself that like anytime somebody was going to hand me a mic, I was going to pick it up and freestyle. Um, and that in and of itself is what put me on this path of freestyling, because I just got more and more practiced at it and more comfortable with just like showing up to the mic, even when I didn't really feel like, it was a moment and something special is going to come through, and like, you know, and just being like, cool, whatever, here's Mike, here's my voice. Okay. Um, and then that just really developed over time, until I was, I got a Boss RC 505 looper eventually, because I saw Sophia, she's in Salt Spring. She's an incredible singer, who I saw open for Yaima in Salt Spring Island. She had one of those, and I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. So I got one and started playing with it. And then through that kind of like developed my own style with creating these like meditative soundscapes that I would then freestyle lyrics over the top of. And that was one of the things that I was doing when the song Mama Gaia came through, and Luke was there at that. Angelic Ascension is what I call those events. And he was there, and he came up to me after, and he was like, "We have to record that one."
Actually, it was like a week later. It was still looping in my head and would not go away. And I was talking to our mutual dear friend, Sunny, Becca, and we both were talking about that particular lyric. Of all the amazingness you did that day, it was like, that lyric, though. Hey, Mama Gaia. Ooh. And that's when I hit you up. Like, will you come over and get pho and record that song?
Yeah, you were
Great
talking
pho
about
spot by my
asking about
house.
our process before. That was Luke and my process for like recording together. Is there? I don't think it's still there,
It
but there.
came back.
Oh my God. Okay, the best pho place ever in Rainier Valley is near Luke's house, and so he would just be like, "Hey, like, can we get together and like get some pho and then record some music?" And I'm like, "Yes, speak to me." You're like talking to my belly first, and then my creative mind. It's like this is how it works.
Perfect. Right. Feel the body, and then you can get to those places, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I love that it's almost like your future self like kind of called down through you when you had that first recording and was like, hey, here's the path, you know?
Totally. Yes. Yeah. So grateful for that. Been
That's
blessed the whole way.
awesome.
Yeah.
And Luke, I would love to hear how like you first got started as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was a little kid, I was always like riding around in my car with my parent in the car with my parents, and like they were both into like singing along, like having tunes cranked. My dad, well, my mom like loved singing along to harmonies, so she'd always sing the harmonies to songs even if they weren't there. And my dad was a bass player in bands for years, like in the 70s and early 80s before I was born. And he would always have me like pick out the bass lines and like sing the bass lines back to him, like in like Beach Boys songs and ZZ Top. And Huey Lewis was my hero when I was 3. I asked for a harmonica for my birthday. And then I would always like memorize other people's song lyrics and sing them back, and me and my friends would like hang out on the playground, like singing back like 90s R&B and rap lyrics, like West Coast gangster rap and like 90s R&Bs. Like that's what I grew up on.
Yeah.
And then when I was like 16, one of my buddies, shouts out Lawrence Epps, like was like, dude, did you know you can make rap beats on a computer? And I was like, wait, what? I never even thought of how they make these beats. Like, and so I went over to his house after school, and he showed me a super early version, a demo of Fruity Loops and then Acid Music. And he's like, well, like you can't like save anything on this demo, but you can like make the loops because there's a bunch of sounds to make the loops with, and then you can like export each little loop and then take them into this other program and build your song with the loop. So I immediately went and got this free program and this cheap program, started making beats. And the second beat I ever made, one of my buddies wrote a rap song to and recorded it. And I was like, whoa, like already somebody's like rapping over my stuff. And it gave me all this confidence to keep going. And then also gave me this idea like, well, if he can rap, I can probably rap. And so I started writing raps to my own beats. And in high school, I went to school with this guy whose older brother produced for Macklemore way before he was famous. And we started like a beat making and recording class my senior year of high school. And shouts out to Budo, aka Josh Karp, for coming in and like teaching us how to use, EQs and compressors and giving us tips. And I just never stopped, like my senior project for high school was a rap album with my best friend Kels, and we did another one in college. And then he kind of fell off music making, so I started making my own. And from like 2009 to 2014, I was like really focused on making beats, rapping to them, and throwing shows so I could perform, and got a lot of experience in all those things. And then I started feeling a shift for myself in 2014. Like I was noticing like selling tickets to local shows as a rapper was starting to, it was losing its shine. You know how that can happen sometimes. A thing you were so excited about can start to like wear a little thin for you. And I was like, "Ooh, like something is coming. A big change in my life is coming. I can feel it." And the next, like the week after my very last rap show, I didn't know it was my very last rap show at the time, but I did my very first producer competition, and the guy who became a mentor of mine for a while and recently passed, R.I.P. J Hatch.
Sorry.
He gave me the advice to become my own engineer, and I had never thought of that. Like I had always like hired people to finish my music for me, and it was like, oh man, like let me go down this path of being able to finish my own music, which led me into like kind of pausing on hip hop and exploring all these other genres, exploring pop music, exploring R&B, exploring EDM. And then I kind of like those diverged, and I like had this like EDM career for a while and this hip hop career as a producer, and I was traveling around the country going to all um these cool events like the ASCAP Expo in LA, networking, learning, and the producer competitions were like a nationwide thing, and so I would travel to their events all over the place and be in these beat battles all over the place, and I um was learning a lot in both areas, but neither of them felt fully authentic. Like each side would like fully embrace part of my personality and part of my musicality. And similar to what Sarah's talking about, it's like, oh man, now you got to pick one lane. You got to just hone in and make a sound that's one thing that otherwise, you won't get booked as an EDM artist, or you got to make like one sound, otherwise you won't get famous as a hip hop producer. And none of that felt right to me. And it kind of everything came to a head in 2021 after I was working so hard on both these projects for the whole pandemic, on this like real strong like divine masculine, like just get it done, white knuckle it, crush my goals. And I just burnt myself out on both things, and I just dropped everything I was doing. I was like, you know what, pause on everything. I'm not even going to make music for 3 months because I've lost all perspective. I have no idea what I want to do. And that week I dropped everything I was doing, and that was right when I got the call to do that one show, and uh and got to meet the two right people at that first show that got me to that party where I met Sarah and all these other people that are my now best friends, and that week I got invited to my first ecstatic dance, and I had no idea what it was, and I showed up to this venue called Ohm Culture in Seattle, where it was just like, I had stopped drinking years before, and I was like, oh my God, like, these are my people, like the people that dance even though they're not drunk. Like, I was always the sober dude in the front of the club, like, dancing the hardest. Like, come on, guys, I thought that's what alcohol was for, so you would actually come dance. No? Okay, I guess it's just me. And I show up and everybody's dancing and nobody's drunk. And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. And I saw that the music in these sets was so eclectic. It would go from genre to genre to genre fluidly, and everybody would follow along and enjoy that it was more eclectic. 'Cause I always hated going to shows where it was just like, okay, cool, it's only house music, or it's only dubstep. And I'm like, switch it up a little bit, guys. And so I got to like experience that and like feel validated that like I can do this too. And then since then, all of my effort on music has been poured into like really bringing these two sides of me together. I guess the side of me that like wanted to make like bigger, dancier music, and the side of me that really liked that like pop appeal, and then also the side of me that really likes positivity and spirituality that was not really embraced in either of those two careers before. And like the ecstatic dance scene was like, oh, this is who I make music for. I want to make music that will make these specific friends of mine dance. And
Beautiful.
And it's been the only actually successful iteration of my music career. And it's like, oh right, when I find my full authenticity, and it couldn't have happened without all of the pieces that led up to it.
So powerful, right? Like, I feel like also with both of your stories, and I think I'm finding that the more I'm talking to people through this podcast, is that one thing that may not be the actual thing for you going forward in the future, but it's actually helping you learn, and it's going to give you the space to actually create something new, right? Like, so you're taking, like Sarah's taking like her her classical training and then her singing and spirituality. And then Luke, you're also taking your like all of those melding of like different genres together and then coming up with something new and that's creative for both of you guys and finding your space and creating something that maybe you didn't even realize was out there or an option is really incredible. And I think that's like one of the really cool things about there's a lot wrong obviously with our day and age right now, but I think that there is something really cool about the fact that there are these spaces that we could just make for ourselves and to be our authentic selves. And like maybe it's very inspiring that okay, maybe you don't see your path out there or you don't see that like, oh, that doesn't really fit or that doesn't really sit with me or my soul. But it's funny how the universe kind of puts these things together and it's like, oh wait, I'm putting it together for you, I'm stringing it together. And having that expression come out in what you guys are doing now is absolutely incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so sweet to get in the experience of life. I feel like I have a similar experience to Luke when he found the ecstatic dance community, and for me, ever since that happened and all of the evolution that occurred from that place, life has become the best thing I never knew how to dream, and because I had a whole idea when I was in my teens. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get married when I'm 22, and then I'm gonna have kids when I'm 26, and then I'm gonna, I don't know. There's like this whole, and I feel like we live in a world where we're coming out of an age in which there is a prescription for life, and
Yes.
you live and you go to school and you get a job and you have a pension and then you retire when you're 65 and then you play golf until you die. And like, there's nothing wrong with that for a lot of people who have done that, but for this generation, it's not very inspiring. And so it's interesting to be, I think, a part of a generation that's kind of like in between. We're kind of like bridging the boomers and like something new, and so to be in that transition between the prescription and being like, actually, what do I really feel called to do, is such an incredible gift. And to be able to understand like, okay, I'm gonna follow signal and I'm gonna cancel noise, and that's really the only important plan to have, because when you do that, you get to actually step into the unknown. And there's so much around oh, but I don't know what's going to happen. I'm so freaked out. I'm so scared. And it's like, but the unknown is where like all of the richness happens. And if you can, align to your heart and your true spirit within your search for that signal, it's only going to lead you into good places, even if there's, some like turmoil and toughness along the way, as you kind of like separate what's feeling really aligned and what's not.
Hi, Wild Ones. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Find Your Wild podcast. This episode is sponsored by my clothing brand, Femme Sauvage, and you can find a discount code and link in the description. So check it out. We have a lot of amazing designs, and $5 of the proceeds goes to different charities. So please feel free to check it out and enjoy the rest of the episode. Thanks so much. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's kind of what Luke said also in the beginning, like you don't see the struggle always of what people go through or that they were really bad in the beginning, or of something, but like you said, you just got to keep going. That unknown is where you could create something that's in your wildest dreams you didn't even imagine, which is really cool. I also wanted to mention I went to my first ecstatic dance actually.
Woo!
In December. Yeah, so like a month ago. And I went by myself. Which it's funny, when I was younger, I have a son now, so doing things by myself is kind of hard, but my husband's really great and like we take turns like doing things, but I went to go see Snow Raven.
Yes.
So that was really, really something spectacular. And I went and just got to like experience, and like they took all of our phones, like, you know, you like checked it, and like just to be there, like there was no shoes and everything. And I had never been to one before, but like it was really nice. It like really, like I was like, oh, that was like a really cool experience, you know? It was like I didn't stay for the whole thing because it was like 3 hours like afterwards of like dancing, and then I unfortunately had started to get sick, which I like was feeling, so I left. But
Good
um
self-care.
yeah, but there it's very cool, and I think that it's nice to go from like one genre to the next, or like mix,
Yeah.
like, because like even when I listen to music, I listen to such a different array of stuff, and it's so cool to be able to be like, oh, what can we combine together, you know?
Yeah. And I think most people do listen to like an eclectic mix of stuff these days. Like I've heard people talk about how like the death of the record store also killed like genre aisles. You had to like
Mm.
go down a physical aisle and buy a physical CD, and you know, so you could totally walk to the other aisle, but like I know I've spent most of my time in the hip hop section as a kid and didn't even like look at the other ones. Whereas like, you know, now when it's like the internet, whatever streaming service, it's like everything's there right next to each other, and like if you listen to eclectic stuff, the algorithm will give you eclectic stuff.
Right.
And it's such a cool blessing to be able to like make your own playlists and vibe out and find what's your authentic mix.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also feel like there's something like really cool and special about, again, like the time that we're living in now, that it's also almost like easier. And I, you know, you guys can, you know, talk about this more, but like it's so much easier to put out music, which is really awesome. And, it's just an easier access, like, you know, like when people are like, oh, I just put this out there, and there's it's so much easier than when we were younger, like Sarah was saying before about how there was just like only one path. If you wanted to sing, then you had to become a singer, and it was going to be really really hard, and you probably, or maybe wouldn't make it. And like, and now there's all of these different paths, and like so many different people can find their space, and it's so much easier for them to be able to share their voice and songs and music with the world. It's like awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I was like, I keep thinking about Snow Raven now because you're talking about her, and like, I mean, you know, it's the Find Your Wild podcast, and what a person who is connected to her wild, right? Like,
Oh,
I'm
yes.
I'm not exactly sure what this show was, but you know, I've seen her multiple times, seen her do her like her, you know, festival sets, seen her do her like festival workshops, and like she can mimic so many animal sounds. It is
It's
like
incredible.
incredible, and like teaches people how to do it. I actually got the opportunity, um, thanks to our friend Blue Morian, who runs like music retreats. And at this one retreat, I was Snow Raven and I were both teachers, and we ended up staying in the same Airbnb out in the mountains outside Durango, Colorado, in this valley. And we're like hanging out outside on the deck, and I got to be there when she heard coyotes for the first time. And it was just
Um,
like the most incredible thing to see her just like immediately be able to like mimic the coyotes, and like shout and like hearing the coyotes and her echo off the canyon walls, and like just like get to be there with like so much joy of like, oh my god, what are those, like what are those, I'm gonna, and she doesn't even know what they are yet, and she's already like perfectly making their sounds and communing with the with the wild dogs. It was so cool.
wow, what an awesome experience. Yeah, it so what the show was, like she started out with just doing like the sounds, the vocalizations of all the different animals, and then eventually she went into her like I guess like electronic, like she has like some other music, and like
Yeah.
kind of goes a little bit more on top of that. Um so it was really nice because it was cool, like somebody else like kind of, I guess you would say, like opened for her, but like I feel like they really got you into the zone of like stretching and like using your voice, and getting to that place of like being able to like absorb when she came on, and like all of the different sounds, which was really really cool.
Yeah.
um but I love that you had that experience with her. I mean, Snow Raven couldn't be a more perfect name for her. Like the Raven, being able to mimic the sounds of other things is really really cool.
Amen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Luke, I know that you have been having like a huge tour. And I saw that you're going to Hawaii soon, which sounds really awesome. I'm sure you're very excited about that, right?
Yes.
What's the process like for you when you have your shows? Like, do you know going into it like what you're going to play, or do you kind
Never.
of you just feel it?
Yeah. I used to, when I first started doing the ecstatic dances, I would pre-plan my sets because I was still learning like the format of like, like it starts chill and it comes up and it hits peaks and valleys and does waves. And so I wanted to make sure that I was like staying true to that format. And then after about a year of doing that, I started doing some freestyled sets, and I kept getting the reflection that the freestyled sets were my best ones.
Mm.
And so I was like, oh well, I'm clearly ready to stop putting in all this extra weeks of work, especially if the freestyle ones are better. And I have like a very organized library. I have all these different folders, like for different like moods and energy levels and situations. It's like there's like the EDM playlists, but then there's like the sexy playlists and the chill out playlists and the melodic, any genre, but it's melodic playlists, and the any genre, but like it reminds me of Kali energy,
Mm.
like. And then I also have playlists that in the ecstatic dance world we have what's this format called the five rhythms that was invented like I think back in the 70s, where it's like you start with like flowing rhythms, so it's like easy to just like slowly move and get into your body, and then it moves into staccato rhythms, like more that house beat, four on the floor kick. And so it's like,
Mhm.
it's really easy to know where to dance on that stuff, but it's more energetic. And then moving into the chaotic rhythms, where it's like, drum and bass or trap or breaks, different like crazier drum beats. And then moving into lyrical, which is more like about the melodics, and
Mhm.
then finally dropping into stillness at the end of the night, and like letting everybody like lay back down on the floor and integrate what just happened. And so I have like playlists for that. And so it is really lovely to be able, with all that organization that I've had, that I've done over years, to be able to just like be present in the room. And like at the beginning of sets, I kind of like call in spirit. I'm like, all right, spirit, like usually I speak in the opening circle, and then, I start playing music, and I just like say, okay, spirit, like I trust you. I'm a channel, I'm a vessel, you know, tell me what to say, tell me what songs to play. And I just allow myself to step into that space. And and usually I'll pick like my first song or two before the opening circle of like the super chill meditative vibes, and then I'll just watch the room. And sometimes, like, like the reason I really like not preparing is because I never know. It feels kind of like hubris to like assume that I could guess what this room of people will need today beforehand,
Mhm.
before I can see them and feel them. And so it's like, if I just get to be in the room and watch them, it's like, oh, sometimes two songs in, these folks are ready to get up and dance hard.
Right.
And other times, like an hour in, and they're still not ready to get up and dance hard. And I never know. I had some shows in Boulder last fall where like one of them was like it took, the Tuesday show took like an hour for people to want to stop rolling around on the floor. So I just played really chill like R&B and down tempo music for an hour, and then people got up and started wanting to move harder, and that's when I brought it up into like that staccato house rhythm. And the show the next night, there had been this whole dance class before, this contact flow class, so everybody, most of the people were already there for that, and everybody was like moving and grooving and warmed up. So like I played like that first meditation song, and people were already standing up, flowing with each other and dancing with each other, and I was like, all right, cool, I'm not going to waste any time, let's just get into it.
Yeah, it's so
And
important to leave that space, right? Like
yeah.
to and it's awesome that you're like it's good to have like organization for things, so then that way you can be able to just do things more freely, right?
Hmm.
Like to be able to have that space to that's kind of like how I do things with my podcast, is like I'll write down a bunch of questions, but then I just leave it open to like the energy of how we're chatting, and like leaving an open space for chatting, because it that is the magic, right? Like that's where the energy is at, is
Yeah.
in the moment and feeling what's right.
Yeah, the interactivity, the presence with
Yeah.
what is instead of the adherence to what I thought would be.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. And did you guys, I didn't see it out yet. Did you guys record a music video for Call of the Wilds?
We have absolutely recorded it about a month ago, and I have been sitting on those files during this whole tour. Like, one of these days,
Well, you're
I
very
swear I'm
busy,
gonna
so
edit this video.
and
Yeah,
editing takes a long time, so I
it
I
can.
understand that, but
It can indeed. So yeah, I wanna give it its like full, full due. But it was a very fun day. We went, it's like we were, all in Seattle. The two of us and Lionija, who we mentioned earlier, who was hosting that potluck we met at, was filming us, and for New Earth Narratives, give a plug.
Yes.
And yeah, and we like went, we didn't have the time to go like all the way out to the wilderness. And this is actually something I wanted to touch on anyway, so I'm glad it's coming this way. It's like we went to this park by my house. That's like a pretty big park that is very woodsy and has trails through it, and just like found these little enclaves where it like looked like we were fully in the wilderness, even though if you like turn the other way, you could see a road over there and with
yeah.
car driving by every once in a while. But like, finding that space to be as much in nature and as connected to the wild as I can be. Like, remembering that like I don't have to, it doesn't have to be like this big thing where I like go all out and like go way out into the wilderness for days to like really connect. Like, it can be drive 5 minutes from my house and walk into the park and like touch a bunch of moss in the rain and like crouch behind a fern.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's also like one of my biggest things too with this podcast is that it's to find your wild. So it's like how you are finding and connecting with nature, however that's like easiest and convenient for you. And then if you want to go out and you feel like called to go out in the wilderness for a couple days, great. But you don't need like a whole big, scenario. And then like sometimes, I even get like imposter syndrome and I'm like, I'm talking about all this wild stuff, but I don't get to like go out like, like I've never been like camping or something. I'm like, I feel like that's really off brand that I've like never been camping, but then I'm like, it doesn't matter, like
Yeah.
it's, like my wild is sometimes like after I'm done feeding my whole family, I go and sit outside and I listen to the bird song and like, see what birds are coming by. Like it doesn't have to be something super out there. It can just be going to the park and sitting behind a fern. Doesn't have to be anything
Yeah.
anything super crazy.
And it's the Find Your Wild podcast, right? It's not the I already fully found my wild and I'm perfect at it podcast.
Right. Exactly.
It's not as good of a name anyways.
Right. Exactly. So it's finding yourself and finding your space and your connectivity like along the way. So yeah, I can't wait to see that though. It looked like a lot of fun.
It was,
So
yeah.
I can't wait. But no rush. I don't want to rush you because I know you've got a lot going on. So
Yeah, I put a lot on my plate right before and during this tour, and it has shown me how much I can do, and also shown me some things about scheduling that I want to be more conscious of in the future, and about making how many commitments I can make.
yeah,
But like,
absolutely.
yeah, back on that, like, like finding the little moments, like, I grew up in the city. I still pay rent in the city in Seattle, and it is, compared to a lot of cities, much more connected to nature, but it's still a big city, and I travel from city to city and do these dances. So, and then between being on my computer and making the music and being on my phone and handling all the business of being an artist that entails, like, there's a lot of screen time and there's a lot of technology time, and like sometimes like me finding my wild that day is like just going and listening to a song with some bird song in the background, or like dropping some bird song in the background of my songs. It's like
Right.
one of my new tracks, Twilight Tango, just like has this little like field recording of birds in a forest through the whole back of the song. And like every time it starts, this first couple of seconds is just the tweet, tweet, tweet with the wind in the background, and then it drops into the song. It's just like calms me every time.
Yeah, I was listening to that this morning. I didn't get to fully listen to it because my son cut me off, but
Yeah.
I really liked it. And you know what? That's okay too. And like just accepting like, hey, you know what? That's my wild for today. That's okay. You know? And I think that a big part of that is like giving grace to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Also. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think so much of like finding our wild too is just happens within us, you know, in every given moment we were talking about, you know, earlier is that kind of like prescribed life or prescribed way of being. And like being wild is really just finding your own way, you know, and finding your own authenticity. And it's like, cool, well, what do I want to do right now? You know, how do I want to express myself? Like if I'm in a moment where I'm like landlocked into a city grid, like how can I be wild within that space, you know, or like, okay, wow, I'm stuck in a meeting right now. Like, how can I like breathe in a way that brings more of my wildness forward, you know, like how can I, you know, sit in such a way that really like helps me embody my presence more, that's going to really fill out this room in a way that I would feel like connected with if I was, you know, go scampering through the forest, you know, 800 miles away, you know, like there's such a liberation is such an inner adventure. And you know we're lucky to live in this physical world where it gets to be expressed in physicality, but you know that gets to look in so many different ways because it starts from inside and then makes its way outward. So you know, like I think Luke and I especially live our lives in some pretty wild ways, you know, but that's because we've been really stubborn and determined to do that, you know, and in the way that just feels like, oh, no, this is what I want to do, you know, no matter what. And so I think just that the fire of that kind of spirit where you're just like, oh, like I'm like awakening to something else. Like I'm awakening to this idea that like I could do things a little bit more the way that I feel like authentically called to, or that would make me feel a lot more alive or a lot more expressed or a lot more free. Like each little incremental step on that pathway is like bringing you into your wildness, and that just gets to, you know, be part of the adventure that you're like shape shifting as you go, and that's part of what makes it so much fun.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah,
Those
especially the
incremental
shape shifting
steps.
too. You know,
Yeah.
because I feel like I love also like incorporating, like I love mythology and trying to actually my first guest she like applies myth to our daily lives now and how we can like look back at mythology and bring that and use that in our daily lives today, which I think is also pretty like wild, right? Like it's a lot of the tales and stories of our ancient past and like how we can learn like from them in many ways, what maybe like what we can learn not to do, or like, oh, I don't want to do that, or maybe like, oh, that's like a I never thought of it that way too. um just again having that space to like find your own wilds in the moment and realizing that you're never not connected from your true self.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Yeah.
It can be these little things. Like sometimes for me, it's just walking out my back door with my shoes off and like touching the grass with my feet.
Yeah.
You know, going outside and just like, you know, trimming a little something in my garden, doing like that little 5 minutes of, I got a couple minutes here, just let me go like touch something in my garden when I'm home. Or you know, just, you know, when I'm on a road trip, like taking that extra little bit of time to like pull over at a rest stop and touch a tree and like breathe the fresh air and do some yoga before I get back in my car and drive another few hours.
Yeah.
Those little things, those incremental things like Sarah was talking about, like you know, they're so powerful. And that's, you know, like, you know, to bring it full circle to what I was first talking about, like that's how I got to where I am, is these little decisions where I chose authenticity in a place where I had continually not before that. And it's okay. Like the world is set up, like to everybody listening, it's okay that you've gone against yourself, because the world is set up in this type of system to have us not do that, to have us not tap in with our authenticity. And you know, we're always getting sold something. We're always getting told we're not good enough, but we got to buy that, and then we might be on the way. And it's okay that we've gone against ourselves, because we always have the choice. It's never too late to choose authenticity, to choose our own alignment,
I
choose
love
to
that
find our
sentiment.
wild.
Yes, I love that sentiment. I love that. It's never too late. You can always choose every day to just go forward and be like, today I'm choosing to be more myself, and however that feels like for you. And I think that the more people align themselves, to their true authentic selves, then I feel like it's just you know, I find that, like, you connect with people better when you're your authentic self. You find the people that, like, you guys found each other, like, um when your authentic self is calling. So sometimes it's just maybe sitting and listening and being able to be like, oh, what is my authentic self saying in my head, like, what is that call, like, what is that why inner wild saying to me that I need right now?
Yeah, it's happening. Like, where does that feeling come from in my body? Like, I've noticed that my most, I've got all these different thoughts and voices in my head. Some of them might be mine, some of them might be ones that I got from other places, and some of them are beautiful and some of them are harmful. But, like, for me personally, like, tapping into my, like, my third chakra, my solar plexus, like, that's the place where I get strong intuitive feelings that that don't feel based in fear, that don't feel based in some sort of societal coercion, that are just like, nah, like, it's like my soul, like, whispering cheat codes for life to me. It's like, hey, you can go that way and skip all the BS. And for a lot of years, I was like, well, it's not logical to just listen to some gut feeling. I have to be logical. I'm the one who's logical, said my ego. And then eventually I decided, like, you know what? My ego keeps leading me down dark alleys where I get beat up for my pocket change. Maybe it's time to listen to this other feeling from my gut. And now it's funny, because now my ego's like, I'm the one who listens to my intuition, and that's smart. Like, yeah, good boy. Yeah, you're awesome, ego. Continue listening to the intuition. Pretend like you're in charge. It's great.
Oh, that's so funny. And I also want to point out that I feel like sometimes when people are trying to get to their true authentic selves, it is that, like, negative, like, voice, or that almost like sometimes I call it like almost like a societal, like, that ego, like that, oh, well, you're like, don't, that seems silly, don't trust that, like, talking about your gut and your inner knowing, right? And then sometimes that, like, really misaligns us, because we're like, oh, well, we have to go with what society's thinking. But you have to take that leap of faith with yourself, and there's no other way to get there besides just taking that leap to be like, okay, I have to just trust myself and my intuition in this moment.
Yeah. And if we're experimenting by doing the other way, why not experiment by doing it this way?
Yeah.
It's all a big experiment. We're taking shots in the dark as people until we know something, until we get enough data to, like, be like, there's a trend here.
Right.
And the trend kept being me ignoring my gut and regretting it. And now my trend is me following my gut and loving it.
There we go. Right?
Yeah. And that's what's more wild than that, like, following my instinct instead of my brain, instead of my mind, and all those little should voices.
Yes, absolutely. I love that so much. And yeah, I can't wait to see what you guys have planned. Like, what's coming up for you guys now?
Sarah?
Well, I mean, gosh, what's coming up for us now? We'll have that music video out soon. And yeah, I think, Luke and I are just always wanting to get back in the studio with each other, it's kind of just like our ongoing thing, and we've been making so much music together, and it's just kind of been popping off. And so we're like, well, we should keep doing this.
Yes.
Because every song we make seems to be fire. So
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, most of my biggest songs are with Sarah.
Yeah.
So I'll listen to the people. And
Yeah, you guys are a powerhouse together.
I think we're both
Thank
going to
you.
be in Colorado in March. Is that?
Oh, we are.
Yeah. So all right, that's our
Yes.
next session.
Yes.
And then yeah, I'm still on this tour, and my goal, one of my big goals this year, is to play 100 shows, 100 paid gigs as a DJ, and I'm well on my way. I'm in the 20s already of booked gigs, and it's the first month of the year, so well on my way to hitting that goal.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
and another one is actually with three of my friends I went to kindergarten with, climbing Mount Rainier, which is this giant volcano, near Seattle and Washington, that I've been looking up at my whole life, and now have the opportunity to climb the top and look down from it. And that feels
That's
pretty
cool.
wild.
Yeah, that is the ultimate, right? That's a great goal. That'll be awesome. So cool. Guys, this was a really awesome podcast. I really appreciate you guys coming on. For everybody listening, let them know where they can find you and listen to your awesome music.
Yeah, absolutely. I can start. I'm on Instagram as I am Sarah Connor. It's SARAHCONNER. That's where you'll find me. I post a lot of music that I haven't released there. So if you kind of want to catch the flavor, that's a good place to be. That's also where I post about all of my immersions and the different workshops and things that I do. So you can find me there. And then also on Spotify as Sarah Connor. There's only I think one other Sarah Connor that's actively singing. She's a German singer, and that's not me. But you'll see if you see this video, you'll catch the difference in the vibe pretty quick.
Yeah, I'll link it below too. So
yeah, great. So yes, Spotify. I also have a YouTube channel. It's called Sarah Connor Music. And that's where I post a lot of my meditative soundscapes that are themed in different ways. I help kind of people tap into like angels, archangels, guides, ancestors, those kinds of things, and just like speak empowering messages that are, live off the top of my, I was going to say off the top of the dome, but it's really from my heart,
Yeah.
for people. And those are the kind of thing you could be working, you could put it on in the background, it's like an hour and a half long. Or if you want to really drop into a really, sacred space with yourself, you can kind of go through and set your space and just really drop in a powerful way. So those are some spaces. Yeah.
Love that. Luke?
Yeah, you can find me at Luke Rain Music on Instagram. I also have at Luke Rain Studios for my recording. I help a lot of people record music, Sarah included, and a bunch of other amazing artists. And at Luke Rain Coaching, as I also coach people. So whatever you're interested in, I got you there. Definitely open for new clients and aligned clients. And Luke Rain on Spotify. You'll see me, you'll catch me on there. It's like a black and white photo of me in a wolf hood with purple psychedelia in the background. And that's a very, very wild representation of me. And yeah, and check my Instagram. I always like pin my upcoming tour schedule to the top of that, and especially right now, I'm traveling up and down the West Coast, and then I'll be out in Colorado in the Boulder, Denver area for late March, and then I'm off to Hawaii. Currently got one gig booked in Hawaii and manifesting many, many more, so I can stay out there on those islands for a while. And
I'm gonna manifest that for you too.
Yeah, if anybody listening in Hawaii has gig opportunities, whether that's ecstatic dances or other DJ gigs or sound bass with that sweet chroma drum that I play in the background of Call of the Wild, or recording or coaching, I'm gonna be out there living my best life, and I would love to connect on that. So I'm real easy to find.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It was so nice to finally meet you and connect with you. And hopefully one day our paths will cross where we can, all meet in person. That would be awesome. I would love that.
Amazing.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Wild Ones, for listening. And we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
feel the energy of life force flowing all through me, and I'll allow it all to dance with my body and play. And no one could ever convince me to give my power away.